Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint Consulting, Darian the Family Guy, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best-kept secret in teaching. You got it, international education. Welcome to the show. All right, this is Greg the Single Guy coming at you with a new episode, and I do want to mention a welcome back to Kent the Cat Guy. How you doing, Kent?
Great to be here. Thanks, Single Guy.
And not from Mexico this time, but from Canada in Mom's basement again is JP Mint. How you doing, JP?
Hello. Good morning from Canada.
I want to introduce you to someone we have just barely even met. His name is Greg Perry. He's a co-founder and CEO of Global Services in Education Limited. Did I get that correct, Greg?
Yes, you did.
Yes. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Well, thanks very much. It's great to be here. I hope I can match the energy. It's my day hasn't been as energetic and positive as this last 5 minutes have been. So thanks for finishing my day really well.
Well, it's really bizarre because you are, literally Kent and I could wave at you right now, right out the window, because you happen to be in Saudi at the same time that we're recording this, right?
Yeah, I didn't expect this at all. We're just down the road from each other. And I don't know anyone, so it's nice to meet you because you're the first people I know. Well, not quite.
Wow, Kent.
And for those of you listening, trying to place, Greg, can you tell us where you're from originally?
Yeah, so I'm Australian, and I've been working overseas since 2000, born and bred in Queensland, Australia. And I guess I'll get more into what I've been doing since in a short time, but that's where I'm from.
Okay, you guys are going to have to call me something else because I'm Greg, and he's our guest, Greg. So what are you guys going to call me throughout this whole episode?
Single Guy.
We'll call you the Single Guy, but Greg, our guest, for those of you who can't see, is by far the very best dressed guests we've ever had.
Definitely. I'm wearing a T-shirt. He's like wearing a tie. I feel underdressed right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you're Shabby Greg, and he's just Greg.
You could call me Shabby Greg on this episode then. That's fine. We all know who's the better dressed guy. It's our guest, Greg. Okay.
I had some big
So,
meetings
Greg, we usually ask for a little elevator pitch of how you got into international education. Can you walk us through from Australia onwards?
Sure. Well, certainly I was a teacher who became a head of school in Australia, and I thought I wanted to do something different. So my first appointment was in Dubai as the principal at an American international baccalaureate school. And I guess to fast forward the next couple of years after that, I met my wife now, Shanna, and we launched our own company called Global Services in Education. And primarily what we do is we set up and operate international schools on behalf of investors and developers. 2008, we've now led projects of a range of different types in 30 different countries of the world. Some of them full school startups and some of them little teacher training projects. I guess we can get into that in a short time, but very much a global citizen. I've been to 64 different countries of the world, and home is where my hat is, I guess. I love what we do, and I'm looking forward to chatting about it.
Right off the bat, I'm thinking, okay, so you went to Dubai. What made you go overseas? If you were in Australia, you were head of school, what made you think, there's got to be something out there?
Yeah, look, I guess I was reasonably successful as a principal, and the next step for me was to potentially be principal of a large, ugly school in inner city Brisbane. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound that exciting to me. I was pretty good at what I was doing, but you know what a big, ugly school in a big capital city looks like. It's not necessarily
big and
fun.
ugly.
Yeah, and so I wanted something different. So I sort of thought, well, why not do something overseas? International baccalaureate is something I'm really passionate about. It's truly very international minded, and I was excited about that. Some people thought it was crazy. How are you going to get an American IB school when you don't have experience as an American principal or IB? But I guess I broke that rule and became quickly very passionate about my craft and continued on. We now set up all different curriculums, British, American, IB, it doesn't matter what it is. Good teaching is good teaching. It doesn't matter. It's just a different vehicle. And I guess I continue to be really passionate about sticking to the core fundamentals of what good teaching really means and what operating good schools means. So I guess my passion continued after that first step into Dubai.
Did you get that school through the IB, or did you go through recruiting, or we just touch on it at least because it's sort of interesting how you leave your home country and just magically go overseas?
Yeah, I went through Search Associates, which is a common process for people that move into IB schools, and went through that standard recruitment process, including attending a fair. Was interviewed by the somewhat famous Dr. Ray Taylor, who's an incredible man, who continues to be one of my mentors. It's influenced my career a lot, and worked with him in Dubai, and yeah, I've loved it. It's been a fantastic journey.
So was Nick your search associate? Because I think he's for all of Australia.
He was at the time, yeah. Yeah, I think he was at the time, yeah.
And then you went to the Melbourne. Is there just the one job fair in Australia?
Where did I go? I think it was Sydney I went to back then. This was back in 2007, 2008, I guess, when I went to the job fair. I think it was Sydney. Taking me back, I'm sure can't exactly remember, but I went to a job fair in person, and was recruited at that fair in person.
And when you met your wife in Dubai, where does she call home?
So she's from America. She's from Louisiana, and so she has a very similar profile to me. A former head of school, very passionate about curriculum. She's currently doing her PhD on curriculum design, particularly focused on women hidden in history, and the fact that women's history is very much, we know history is written by white men, don't we? So certainly there's the concept of identity of women has been lost in history and lost in curriculum, and she's very focused on that. I'm learning a lot along the way as well. It's been a fascinating journey to sort of follow her recent studies in that focus too.
I need to mention this. I did a little bit of Googling in between school today and getting online with you guys, and I went on your website. And your wife, Shauna Perry, is famous, so to speak, because, let me read it directly from this. It says, in 2018 and 2019, Shauna was identified as a top 30 in education category for global gurus and among some of the world's leading education experts, including Sir Ken Robinson, Eric Jensen, John Hattie, and Robert Marzano. Names that we know. Wow. And, I mean, what do you do when you go home? Do you talk about curriculum? Or do you have a rule like, don't talk about work, honey? No talk about work at home.
Look, we have a strict rule. The truth is we have a similar work profile. And so as professional partners, we keep our portfolios very, very clear. She does her thing, I do my thing, and she tends to do existing schools operations, and I tend to do startup and business development. But no, she particularly has a very strict rule. We don't talk about work outside home. Professionally, we talk a lot, and we share ideas, and we bounce ideas, and we check each other's emails and communication. Hey, did I say this right? We debrief after events. Very, very strict at home. No, we don't talk about work
Not at home.
Very important.
Yeah, otherwise, you're sleeping on the couch. You bring it up. Boom. That's history.
And she's better at it than me. She's better at it than I am. So she's very strict.
So I'll jump in. Yeah, well, I'll jump in here. So, Greg, tell us about some of the places that you've opened up schools. And is it opening up a school and getting things going? Is it easier and harder than the average teacher and person might think it is?
Thanks for mentioning that, because to be honest, when we first did it, it was this romantic idea that we could do it better than everyone else, because we're educators. We know how to run schools. And I often say that I love great food. I love going to restaurants, but it doesn't mean I can run a restaurant. And I had this naive idea that I could set up and operate schools far better than anyone else. I hope I do it pretty well, but to be honest, it was romantic and silly and certainly very naive, because it's much harder and much more complicated than I first thought. We did a project in India, and then we moved to China. We lived in China for 8 years. So a lot of our early work was setting up schools in China. I think we did about eight to 10 different schools in China, mainly British schools, some language schools as well. So that was probably where we did a lot of our early work, particularly UK curriculum and IB curriculum, as well as language schools and SAT centres. But to be honest, we've worked in many different places, 30 different countries. I've been to East Timor. We've done projects in Palestine. We currently have projects in Libya, 3 in Africa, Morocco, a new project that we just commenced. We've got 12 projects under contract that haven't commenced yet, but under contract in Saudi Arabia, and a bunch of other places that I could get into. So France and Italy. So yeah, it's broad geographically, done a lot of work in a number of different places, but it is complicated and much more difficult than people realise.
Well, how big is your... Yeah, go on.
Can you step us through those initial steps, like how people contact you, investors contact you and say, we want to open a school, or are you cold calling investors? How does that work out?
I guess in the early days, I maybe did a little bit of cold calling, but to be honest, without trying to sound egotistical, I think we're the loudest and most credible voice in this space. If you Google setting up an international school or how to open a school, you'll find us on the front page. We've published more than 400 articles on the topic of international education and setting up schools. So that's given us a pretty high profile on the web about in this space. So we probably get about 12 to 15 leads per week on this topic, where people contact us and say, hey, I want to set up a school. And it can be everything from mum and dad have got a dream but don't realise how much it's going to cost, through to really big developers. So we're talking to someone at the moment from Jordan who's a billionaire, who's got a vision to do a university, etc. So, I mean, that came through, our network and someone referred us. But basically, now a lot of the leads come to us, generated by the fact that we share our stories and our knowledge out there in the World Wide Web. And then people hear about what we're doing and then they reach out and say they want to chat about it.
That's exciting.
How big is your operation, Greg?
We have a person in each of our locations, so we don't run a big office. Believe it or not, we run a virtual office. So people say, "Oh, can you take me to your office?" We don't run an office. We've got a person in each of our schools. So our company's registered in the US, and we also have a company registered in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. But we don't run a big office. We run virtually. So we have a person in Indonesia that runs project management, leader in each of our schools. So we're fairly lean and very much focused on putting people where they need to be. Because if you're running a school, what's the point of having those people in some kind of ivory tower? They need to be in the school leading projects. So our people tend to be where they need to be.
I have a request, maybe. Since we have our listeners from, that sounded weird, right? I have an idea, and this is just to promote you, Greg, and what you do. But my question sort of comes from the idea of the listeners that are new teachers or not in international yet. And I've always had this idea that smaller startup schools, while not for me, not necessarily as a preference, but smaller schools, could you talk to us about what draws your teachers and your quality teachers to get to a new upcoming school in another country?
Look, one of the things that attracts people is teachers see it as a pioneering opportunity. And it is. I mean, how exciting it is to create something from nothing. Teachers are often attracted to it, particularly young teachers, because they really want to be a part of something fresh and new. Experienced teachers, and maybe that's yourself, Greg, realize that it's far more complicated than that, and you realize that you're starting with a blank piece of paper. Curriculum is not a textbook. You design curriculum, and you design curriculum for context. So it doesn't matter how many textbooks you've got. Experienced teachers know you walk into that classroom and you design things from scratch, and you don't have a filing cabinet to go to. You don't have those files aren't there from the last year. So you're creating something from scratch. So that romantic idea is pretty easily diffused. One of the exciting things about a brand new school is you don't have rules, but that's also one of the challenges because you don't have that past history of procedures and systems to follow. So I love it because I don't have to follow too many rules and procedures, but it means that our shoulders need to be pretty broad and you lose a lot of hair and your hair goes grey because you've got to deal with things.
Is that what happened?
And I think the other thing is too, and you would know, like you're dealing with different and varied cultural contexts. China, I lived in for 8 years. It's the toughest place I've ever worked. And it's not the language. It's not the language at all. It's the dynamics of how people operate, what motivates people in the workplace, etc. We're now working in Africa, a completely different paradigm, Middle East as well. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, might be going off track, but it's a romantic idea. People are really keen to do it. But what we tend to look for is not necessarily the most experienced educators because they might be a bit stiff and stuck in their ways. You want some people that have got the right level of experience, but they're ready to roll up their sleeves and they're prepared to open up boxes and do whatever it takes because it's an entrepreneurial startup process and it's tough, so it's fun, but it's tough.
So can a follow-up question, and then I'll let my co-host ask you a few. When I do look at schools, I do have like this little fear, like it's not accredited, it's not well-established, it's going to be exciting, but how do I, is there a rubber stamp? Is there a symbol? Is there some kind of association that these might be a part of through your the schools that your company help start up? Is there some kind of a rubber stamp that people could look for and say, oh, wow, that's part of that consortium? Or, you know what I mean? Because when I'm looking at schools, I don't want to, I like to have that experience in that adventure, but you're also talking about a year, 2 years of your life to start as in a small school.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question to answer because there's many rubber stamps and you've got to be careful about whether they're rubber or rubbery. I'm not going to mention their names, but I mean, Saudi Arabia is a good example where I see schools with stamps on their wall and I go, that doesn't mean you're accredited. That just means you're a member of an association. And they've been given out like lollipop, like candy. There are accreditation bodies that are very serious, CIS, WASC, International Baccalaureate, etc. And there are others that are far less serious. So I guess I don't want to name some of the ones that are less credible, but the truth is you've got to be careful and cautious. I first started coming to Saudi Arabia about 2 years ago, and I remember I visited a lot of schools. And I remember walking into one school, actually this happened frequently, where I'd say, oh, you're an American school, can you tell me who are you accredited through? And they said, oh, McGraw-Hill. I said, but McGraw-Hill is a textbook publishing company. I'm like, yeah. We all know that McGrath-Hill is not an accreditation group, and they're not an American school just because they use an American textbook.
And we talk about that in other countries are the same way. And there's many countries that do that. You go into it, and that's where my fear is, and what my cautionary tale is for new teachers and people coming into international. Just because it says American International doesn't mean that it's more than just Esperanza in her little garage with 5 kids. So I was just wondering, and I don't like to call it names. I was just wondering if there's a way for people to know that your schools that you have built up and you built this reputation, is there a way for them to know that you're part of that school founding?
Yeah, so if a school claims that it has accreditation and it's a credible accreditation body, you can go to that accreditation body and you can look them up.
Correct,
for example,
but what about yours?
It depends, because I guess we're not a McDonald's cookie cutter kind of approach. It depends on the school. If it's a Cambridge school, for example, we have a school in Malaysia, you can look up Kingsgate International School and you can see that it's accredited through Cambridge. You can go, it depends on different cases, because it depends on whether it's Cambridge, Edexcel, Oxford for the British schools, International Baccalaureate, American.
IB, WASC, all those things, right?
So
okay.
I think Greg is kind of getting at, you put your logo on a school's website or something and say opened by your consortium.
Yeah, we have different models. So we have some organisations that want us, but they want us to pretend that they did the work themselves. So almost like a secret.
What I do all day.
Yeah. But
Kent the Cat Guy has a consortium behind him.
But yeah, our preferred model is. In the same way that GEMS might do, it's not necessarily called the GEMS school, but it's operated by GEMS, so a school operated by GSC. And we've changed that model a bit over the years. I have a new vision and a passion to probably work with smaller schools and provide more support in smaller corners of the globe, where we might provide almost a franchise style model where we're not at the school every day, but we provide support at distance, because we want to be more accessible, and there are small schools that just can't afford us. They can't afford a full education management model, but maybe they can afford a less expensive branding kind of model where we say, hey, you're a GSE connected school in some way. You can have our school in a box and we'll give you the policy, procedures, handbook and the systems, but we're not going to be there every day because that's really expensive. So yeah, we've explored a few different things.
Thank you.
What are some of the reasons schools would reach out to you? So you've set them up, you got the ball rolling, you're still associated with them, you're still kind of put things in motion. What is it most likely these schools will need help with as they start to develop and grow?
One of the things that we say make us a little bit different is I'm an educator who became a business person, and it's of two very different paradigms. Like educators and business people fight every day, don't they, about their priorities, and I think what we've become pretty good at is we've become the bridge between education and business. I say without money there is no mission, and without mission there is no money. Both have to work side by side. And some people say I never want to work for a for-profit school because they're evil and terrible and money and education don't mix. I think that's an antiquated, old kind of view. That's no longer the case. I understand that view, but schools need to be operated with those two things very well managed. For example, we have a new project in Morocco. It's an international baccalaureate school. It's what we call a greenfield project. It's a family with a piece of land, and they want us to help them. So we'll provide education expertise for that project because they don't know how to set up a school, but also they need to know the financial modelling. They need to know what it's going to cost to launch the school, how many years until it reaches positive cash flow or break even, or what it's going to do in 10 years' time. So you need to have both of those coming together. And I think it's pretty hard to find people that are education specialists. And I mean, I do keynotes at education conferences on curriculum design and critical thinking, and I can sit around, have a cup of coffee and sit around and talk curriculum all day long, but I can also hopefully talk the business side as well.
To follow up, JP, I know you want to jump in there. Greg, business is kind of booming. You've got a lot of clients that are interested in your services. What is it about the now that is an opening for your business and for these schools? Is there something about this particular time in history? Is it a boom in the number of students and families interested in international education and these private schools? Is it a failure of some other part of our systems? What is it that's created an opening right now?
I think there's a lot of money is flowing into developing countries. There's a rise in middle class. Countries like Vietnam, parts of Africa, there's a rise in middle class, and the middle class is not satisfied with the quality of education that local public and private schools provide, so they want something better. So I think that's one of the reasons why international schools are really flourishing in these developing locations because of that. Let me be crass about it. There's a lot of money to be made in education. There's a lot of money to be made in schools.
Is it? No, hold on a second, Greg. Is it true? So, I just saw that Silicon Valley school didn't take off. I don't know if you read that article today. Zuckerberg was planning to open up a big low-income school in Silicon Valley, and they shut that project down. So I was wondering, is it still the case where there's lots of money in the school pot out there?
Look, again, I'm sorry to be crass about it because I am an educator. I care about kids. So that's my.
But you got to be business too. Yep.
But the truth is, there is. They're very profitable. Schools are making 35.
Not my math lesson today. You would have lost money on that, Greg. So just warning you ahead of time.
There are schools making 35% profit margins, and you do the numbers, 1,000, 2,000 kids, and you do the numbers on the tuition fees, and you have to take your shoes off to count that out. They're very profitable. But to be fair, some of those big groups are doing a good job too. Like schools like Cognita and Nord Anglia, they've done a really good job in some of those developing locations to create better bilingual curriculum. They're doing some good work, and fair enough, you could be critical of some of those big private equity groups and what they're doing with schools. But on the other hand, there is a trickle-down effect. There are certainly a high quality of education moving to different corners of the globe now.
One more for you, Greg. Greg, for all of the ITP crowd, it's your audience. The ITP crowd will listen to what you have to say, but they'll be very skeptical about the for-profit model. What is it that you want our teachers to hear from you directly? You believe in your heart. What is it that you want them to know that when they come across you and your schools, that they should hear you out?
If you've listened to my TEDx talk, if you've read any of my blog articles, if you've heard me speak, and I'm always speaking about something, is you'll hear me talk about what I call vision and mission integrity. And what that means is that vision and mission shouldn't be something that you put on a piece of paper and laminate and throw on the wall. It's something that should be lived in every school. So you guys are educators, you know what it's like. You walk through a corridor and you know if a school is good or bad just by the feeling. You know whether it's, you know what it's like. So school might proclaim to be something, it might be a school that cares about kids, that cares about STEM, that cares about culture and the arts. But vision and mission integrity means that the behaviours in the school reflect that. We describe it as signature experiences, just like you go to Starbucks and you get the common experience every time you go to Starbucks. If a school says that its vision and mission is this, do the behaviours in that school actually reflect that in practice?
Walk the walk.
And I think that's what's really important. So it doesn't matter whether the school is for profit or non-profit, that's what you need to be checking out. So, take, for example, a school that says they care about mindfulness and they care about caring for the whole person. But on the other hand, you walk down the corridors and you can just feel it in your spine that the big stick is out and they don't care about teachers' welfare and well-being, and the meetings are long and people are yelling and there's bullies and, does the vision and mission match the behaviours in the school? That's really important.
And what you're saying is that you drive that message to your investors and to those that are opening the schools in your stead, because you were mentioning you have people in the countries, so you're not physically Greg Perry walking into every particular new school and opening it. You've trained people, you've got people on the ground.
Yeah, that's right. But also, these times of technology, we're online all the time. So, for example, Shannon, my wife, is not in Saudi Arabia at the moment. She's in Malaysia, but I'm in the same WhatsApp groups as she is, and we had a significant issue in a school today, and I saw the message come through, and she goes, "Hey, I'm going to jump online. Here's the Zoom link." Bang, and she got online and she gave advice and coached and mentored the school leader about how to manage a serious situation with a teacher that needed to be managed. So that's sort of the way it is. We don't work 24/7. We do turn off, but we're very accessible and we coach and mentor leaders in the way we do things. And I'm not saying we're perfect. Let others be the judge. But this is, I guess, how we share our practices. We say, hey, this is how we do things with GSC. You want to work for us? You want to work with us? This is how it should be done. And I guess we push and influence through being available and very accessible.
Do you hire the teachers, or do you work with the school to found and open up the school and sort of hands off and let the school do the hiring, et cetera, et cetera?
We lead everything, but I guess that doesn't mean we actually execute ourselves. So, for example, we don't tend to go through recruitment agents. We don't tend to do that, but we tend to lead the processes. So we'll do the advertisements on TAS, we'll do the advertisements somewhere else, and then we'll have a process. So depends on who it is. Shanna and I personally will select heads of school ourselves. We'll be very hands-on about that, but we might delegate the teachers and other parts. I'm pretty tough on principalship, to be honest. I think they're the most important person in a school because good teachers teach badly under a bad principal. You need to make sure someone at the top's really managing people really well. So we're tough on that. But yeah, we run the processes, we lead the processes, and we either do it ourselves or we coach and mentor others to recruit well.
You're the big idea people. You're running that idea of how to get the school started, and you set up the building blocks for it. One follow-up then about principals and heads of school. Are you having them come to you, or are you using other agencies? You go headhunting for them? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, we advertise. We use the general advertising, and we do go, we can go through recruitment agents and organizations as well. But if it's a high-profile school, you tend to get lots of advertisements, lots of applicants, and I guess it's just screening those processes. So we might, depends on the position, but we might have other people screen for us to screen it down to a narrower field, and then we might get involved in the final selection. I think Shanna's better at it than me. She's really good at, her instincts are better than mine. I've made some bad decisions in the past. She's
we
much
all
better.
have, yeah.
She sent you to the podcast, let's be honest.
Yeah, but she's very intuitive. I think I'm a good people person, but she's exceptional. And she's really good at understanding people, and I think she looks for the right kind of things. I think I'm pretty good at coaching and mentoring, but she's really good at selecting and understanding people.
All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITPXpats. That's with an S. ITPXpats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show.
And can you tell us some of the challenges of working with, like you mentioned, a billionaire in Jordan? So working with business people who want to open a school, what are some of the challenges that you run into when dealing with extremely rich people who just want it to happen? Like, let's just make a school.
Yeah, well, I have contracts, of course. I have legal contracts. But once I sign them, I sort of don't care about them because the next step is building a close and connected and authentic relationship with them because I have to get them to trust me. They need to know I'm not going to steal their money. They need to know that I'm going to do a really good job managing the school. So I work really, really hard at developing a strong and connected, trusting relationship. The other thing that I focus a lot on, and we focus a lot on in the early part, is teaching them how schools work, because they might be a real estate development person or the hospitality or in the jewelry business or whatever, but that doesn't mean they know how to run schools, as I said before with a restaurant analogy. So I've got to help them understand that difference. I've also got to help them understand the cultural differences. So China for 8 years, one of the problems I came across regularly was that you start up a brand new school and the owner would want to put a fingerprint machine in the front door, and teachers would walk through and they'd have to put their thumb on the fingerprint to check in at the workday and check out at the end of the workday. Now, in my culture, the only time we use our fingerprints is when we go to jail.
Oh, no, save that story for the end, Greg. We'll come back to that. Don't worry.
So, I mean, teachers get really upset. They go, what do you mean I've got to check in and check out at the end of the day? I'm grading till 10 o'clock at night and I'm working on weekends. What do you mean I'm checking in on my workday? So these are cultural things where they don't understand how. And also in our culture, we tend to devolve authority. We delegate authority and we develop people, where in some other cultures, it's a different way of managing people. So we spend a lot of time working with the business person to help them understand that. We're doing this now for 15 years, so I'm much tougher on the business owner now than I used to be as well, because I've learned the mistakes in the past. I'm really strict. The owners are not allowed to be involved in operation of the school. And we're really tough on that. And it's sometimes difficult, but the truth is you can come into the school whenever you want to. You can ask anyone any question. I tell our staff, you must be honest. There are no secrets. There are no games to be played. But the owner's not allowed to instruct staff. They're not allowed to issue instructions. They want to talk. They want to make a change. They come to us. So
wow,
I'm not saying that's easy. I'm oversimplifying it a little bit. It's quite complicated. But you own the school. You don't run it. And that's something that we're really tough on.
I think you understated that a little bit, Greg. I think it's absolutely fascinating that you and your team can help build schools in so many parts of the world, because it's not just putting a school in, it's dealing with so many different nuances in cultures. Just having a meeting with somebody in another country you've never been to or you haven't experienced, you have to sort of go into it with open eyes and very carefully and be aware of the little cultural nuances. You don't want to step on feet in it. You don't want to give everything away. You have to find a happy medium. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And a good example, I mean, you guys know from Saudi Arabia the complexities around gender. And we know that Saudi Arabia has transformed so much in recent years. And it's very much a different place to what it was 10 years ago. And as my wife, Shanna, is a strong, independent woman who cares about women's rights and those kind of things. She's really comfortable with the way things are working here in Saudi Arabia and the reforms that are happening. Things are really, really positive. But let me say how naive some people can be about Saudi Arabia. So I know of British schools that are excited to come to Saudi Arabia, and there's a bunch of them. And they talk about how I'm going to come to Saudi Arabia, and we're going to bring the West to Saudi Arabia, and we're going to have co-educational classes, mixed gender classes, and it's going to be great. And I say to them, you're crazy. Because even though the law might say you can do X, Y, Z, you've got to understand the culture. In my country and yours, research proves that sometimes single-sex classes are far better for girls and boys, and they achieve far better educational outcomes. Maths and science, literacy, etc. So this idea of, we're going to move boys and girls together because this is going to make it better is crazy. The families aren't ready. The culture's not ready to accept that. They don't understand it. And hey, let me reframe it differently for you. Why don't we keep some single-sex classes because it's better for boys and girls, but for different reasons? If you're keeping boys and girls separate because it's better for kids educationally, that's different to separating them because you don't believe boys and girls should be together. So, sorry, I don't mean to rant, but you've got to understand and listen to the culture. You've got to understand what's happening. You don't go in and impose your McDonald's model of school on a culture, whether it's Vietnam, Palestine, China, Africa. You've got to look and listen and pause and be patient and understand.
And where are you getting this cultural context? Because you did mention you've visited 60 plus countries, but how are you tuning in so quickly to the cultural context to be able to speak to it?
I don't know. I guess.
Fair enough.
I believe in humanity. Some people read books. I don't. I haven't read those books. You know, everyone's got that book. Oh, you're working in China. Quick, read these 10 books. I haven't read those books. I'm sorry. I think what I do is I look for what's the same about culture, not what's different. Let's take religion. Islam and Christianity is exactly the same. Separate out some of the, the routines and rituals and all the rest of it. The truth is, it's about being a good person and being good to other people. Let's pair it back to the core essence of most religions are mostly the same. We did a project in Palestine, and I love the Palestinian people. I can condemn Hamas and I can condemn Netanyahu in the same breath. I've sat around the table with wonderful people in Palestine that just want peace. So I think it's the ability to separate the smoke, focus on the core, understand what true humanity is all about, and to understand more about what's the same than what's different. And I think that's really important. I don't worry about making mistakes. I mean, look, if you go to China, there's all sorts of rituals and you've got to sit in this chair and you've got to do that. Look, I know those rules, but you know what? If I'm connected to that person and they know I'm genuine and authentic, they don't really care that much. It's about being genuine and authentic to the person in front of you.
That's refreshing to hear. I have a sideline on that, or similar to that, is people have asked me before, are kids different overseas? And I say, nope. The kids are all the same, man. All the kids are whether they're in Kent's classroom or if they're in Peru or if they're somewhere else, kids are kids. And once you figure that out, as an educator, you realize that then you can get deeper into their differences after you realize we're all just human. And kids want to go out and play. They want to learn. They want to trust the educator. They want to know their principal and not be afraid of them. They want to know what to expect. So it's very interesting. And JP's point is a good question, because if you're in so many countries, how do you deal with all the cultures? But I guess you're saying is that we're all the same when it comes down to trust and getting to know each other, right?
Look, it is stressful, though. It is challenging. I mean, when we started to do some work in Africa the last couple of years, African culture I just went, oh my God, wow, this is just so different. Things weren't happening fast enough for me. I didn't understand how to motivate people. I didn't understand how to get things done. And I just had to take some deep breaths and chill and just figure that out. Shannon and I are not cultural experts, but I think that we're very open-minded. We're very much accepting of difference. And I think that's probably, you have to be more open-minded. You don't need to be an expert. You need to be open-minded and care about people.
Greg, let's get out the crystal ball for a few minutes here. Thinking ahead 5 years, 10 years.
Crystal ball.
What is in your opinion, what's the education picture look like? How is it similar? How is it different? What do you see? Not just next week or next month or next year, but really looking forward, really looking a bit in the future. What do you see?
I think we're going to have a lot more hybrid education models in schools, particularly in secondary more so. I think there's going to be kids that are doing some of this stuff online and some of it face to face. And some of that scares me as much as it might scare the readers or the listeners, because how we're going to do that, we're going to have to figure it out along the way. But you know what? COVID happened and someone pressed a button and suddenly we had to teach online, remember? And we figured it out. And I think what's going to happen is that COVID proved that we could do some of these things. We already wanted to anyway, and we were talking about it. It pushed us forward faster. So I think there's going to be a lot more hybrid learning. And our brand new school in Morocco that we're talking about at the moment, it won't open for 2 to 3 years because it's got to be constructed. But we're already talking about how the fact that even in 3 years' time, it's going to be radically different, and we better prepare for it and design the school in a particular way that is going to cope with hybrid learning. I think there's going to be much more privatisation in international schools. That's going to continue to spread because operating public schools is really expensive for governments. So if they can outsource it to those that can afford, they're going to continue to do so. That's happened in US, Australia, Canada, UK as well. That privatisation is going to happen because governments know that it's cheaper for them to encourage private schools to operate. So I think that's going to happen. I'd like to think we're going to become more globally minded. I think there's going to be more language teaching and the world's much smaller now. So that connectedness between countries, I think, is going to happen more and more. Look at I don't want to get into politics, but look at the silliness that's happening in recent times with politics. That flow on effect has been really fast. It's instant, where 50 years ago it wasn't instant. But I think that connectedness between countries and cultures is going to get even stronger. That's the first.
Do you see a lot of national teachers, teachers in their country moving overseas? Do you see that growth continuing?
I think that will happen, but I think there's going to be a lot more grassroots within developing countries. We need to train up those local teachers, so we can't rely on expatriates. If you ask any principal anywhere in the world right now, they'll say there's a teacher shortage because it's all relative. Even in the most premium schools, they want more teachers that are better qualified. So everyone's saying there's a teacher shortage. So I think that there will continue to be movement, but I think we really have to focus on developing local staff. And that's tough because it's a paradigm change. Our international education model is far more abstract and conceptual. We're not page turners. We don't just use textbooks. We design curriculum and we differentiate and we focus on Bloom's taxonomy and Mazzano's high yield strategies, a whole lot of things they don't know. But I think that needs to be the focus, is developing local talent.
Good answer. And that's a difficult one for international schools because they want to get the expats from their countries to bring in extra education and their viewpoints and their successes. But the local teachers, it's hard because they pay local teachers, generally schools, international schools, pay so indifferently between expats and locals. So difficult.
Yeah, and look, there's some racial stuff in this as well. The concept of a native English speaker and how discriminatory that is,
Oh, yeah.
There was a time when South Africans couldn't get visas in China because they weren't considered native English speakers. They can speak better English than I can. I might have the perfect accent, but, I sometimes speak too quickly. It's crazy, this view we have of skin color and culture and passport. And it's driven a lot by parents because parents say they want the American accent, the British accent, Canadian accent, Australian accent, etc., which is really quite silly. So I think we've got a long way to go, but I think it's slowly changing. And I'd like to think that we can continue to push it a little bit. But it's tough for international schools because they've got high fee paying parents demanding they want that particular face and passport, and it's really unfair. But hopefully we can change that and move it in a more positive direction.
It's an interesting crystal ball that you have. I like that. I think it's going to be great, especially the hybrid is going to be something that's going to stay with us, in my opinion. It's going to continue with us in the technology.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Greg, we've come to the part where we do want to hear that fingerprint story in your background. So, do you have a police story that you can share with our listeners? Or if not, then an airport customs?
We're on a time limit, so we can only hear a couple of them. So save the best ones.
No, not at all. I've thankfully never been in trouble with the law. So it's just an analogy that I use to try to help owners understand how serious it is for some of us. I've never been in trouble with the law, so I've never given my fingerprint. But I guess that's the point. I've never had to give, or maybe I've had to for the odd visa. But, like owners don't understand how culturally radical that is to tell a professional teacher to check in and check out when they're working 12, 14-hour days and through the weekends. And docking, they want to, I've seen owners want to dock pay, take pay off because the teacher supposedly left an hour late, but they might have ducked home to pick up their kids or do something, and then they were working till midnight grading reports and designing curriculum. Now, the owner doesn't know that. I do, because I'm running the school.
It's a lack of trust.
Yeah. So, but to be fair to the owner, it's a different culture. In Asia and, China, it's very much, operated that way, where people do check in and check out, and they don't have the freedoms. We don't devolve responsibility so much to people in those cultures. They tend to do as they're told or as they are instructed, where in our culture, we tend to encourage people to have initiative and make decisions for themselves and come up with new ideas, where in some cultures that's disrespectful.
We dream of Shabby Greg doing what he's told. If you could consult with us, Greg, on that, if we could just say, I'll pay the bill, whatever it takes, but please consult me how to get him to just follow directions.
So, Greg, you and Shannon have traveled around the world, and I know you've spent significant time in different places. Are there three things? It's another one of our questions on the show. Are there three things that you take with you when you do move around and you settle down? Are there three things that you take with you to make you feel at home?
Wow, that's tough.
Not including Shannon, not including kids or anybody. No animals, nothing like that. No heartbeat stuff, right?
No heartbeats.
I'm going to get teary to think about the first one, but let me try and hold it together. I have a blanket that my mother knitted for me many years ago. Let me tell you the full truth of the story. She was at a time when her and I were in conflict, and for silly reasons, and she knitted that blanket and gave it to me sometime after. And I look at that blanket, and it reminds me of how special she is to me.
Oh my goodness.
That's with me in the locations where we're at. And if I can connect with Shanna on this, Shanna's father passed away a few years ago, but he was the oldest living lung transplant patient in the world.
Wow.
He had a lung transplant, and that's an incredible story that she could share another time about that history. And after he passed away, he was a sports fan, as many Americans are, and he had a whole lot of history. And what Shanna did is she made a quilted blanket out of his T-shirts and sweaters and jackets and stuff. And she carries that with her wherever she is too, and she has it over her knee, whether she's cold or hot or not. And I know that brings her warmth. So I think that's two connections to home that I care a lot about. Now, I don't think I've got number 2 and 3.
Mine are so insignificant. I mean, I have to have a maid and ice. And you just blew me out of the water with these wonderful...
Those are the best choices I think we've ever heard.
Yeah.
I'm dumbfounded. I'm speechless because I'm going to have to come up with 3 new ones now.
We have this silly soft toy. It's a soft monkey, and we call the monkey Peter Parry, which is ridiculous. And so it's this silly game.
We just have Kent. We use Kent for that.
And I can get him for you. He's in just around the corner. He's in the room here. And I don't know. It's just a silly game we play because I hate being away from Shanna. She's in Malaysia right now, and I'm here. And sometimes we have to be apart. And I really struggle on my own. And we play this funny dialogue game. It's like a secret friend, but he's not so imaginary. And if I eat too much chocolate or ice cream, I go, Pete maybe go to the shops, and Pete got me this ice cream and stuff. So we play silly
Does
game.
Shannon know that you're talking about the monkey online? Yeah. We're going to send her the link to this.
Yeah. So we have this silly soft toy that he's with me at the moment, and Shannon and I will seriously talk about him as if he's real and he's in the room, and send photos.
That's awesome.
It's a silly game that we play, but to be honest, let me get a bit more serious. I'm 55 years of age, and I have lost a fair bit of weight. I lost about 20-something kilograms over the last few years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I exercise a lot now, and it's a lot to do with my mental health. and I exercise in some way almost every single day, and it's just really important for me. So I used to do Muay Thai a little bit, which is far more intense, but now I exercise a lot. And Shan will say to me, hey, you're running too much. And she's right. I need to be careful. I don't want to get knee replacements or hip replacements. But you know what? It's my medication. I need to. It's something that keeps me alive. It keeps me healthy. It keeps my mind fresh. And it makes me feel so good afterwards, not when I'm doing it.
I just have this picture of you like on a treadmill with the monkey.
Peter making you run.
Yeah, but I think, you know, what we do is really challenge. I love what we do, but it's really stressful sometimes. And I think it's important to switch off and exercise. And it oxygenates
It's
my brain.
cathartic, yes.
It makes me feel so good. And she said to me yesterday, she said, you're running too much. And I said, yeah, I know, I need to be careful. But you know what? I got to do it because it makes me feel good. So.
Well, you guys are both traveling so much. It sounds like you have a great relationship, and you're both doing a lot of things out in the world. You're making our podcast come to life we have listeners in over 120 countries,
wow.
and from all parts of administration down to new teachers thinking about it to pre-service teachers. So I think it's wonderful to hear how you're starting out the places that we are going to teach, which is absolutely amazing. I didn't mean to get into final thoughts, Kent. I'm sorry. He usually does the final thoughts thing, right?
Well, we will go around the horn for final thoughts. So this is your chance to tell us final things on your brain. Let's see. Let's start with, where do I start? Let's start with JP Mint.
Well, I was going to ask Greg before we started this was what are your hopes from coming on to the podcast today? Would you like to encourage our new to teachers to consider heading overseas, or would you like administrators that are looking to start up schools to reach out to you? What were your thoughts about coming on to ITP today? And did we
Yeah, look, I have no selfish agenda at all. I mean, my clients are wealthy people that want to start up and own a brand new school. I don't think there's going to be a lot of listeners here that have got $50 million in the bank that are ready to launch a brand new school. So I guess I have no agenda. I have no agenda selfishly. I seek no new business from being on here. I guess I love to share things that I'm passionate about. If you look at my LinkedIn, I have a significant profile on LinkedIn. And I think if you look at LinkedIn and the posts that I share, it's a mixture of leadership stories, leadership lessons. I like to coach and mentor people, so I'd love to be able to continue to help leaders, but I'm not going to receive compensation for that necessarily. We're not into running leadership workshops so much these days or programs, so I love to share our expertise in that space. I love what we do. I think that international education could change the world. I really do. We don't teach kids how to think, so we don't teach kids what to think, but we teach kids how to think. And at a crazy time in the world we're in right now with all the politics and silliness that's happening in the world, wouldn't it be great to create some informed citizens that can go on and make a difference in the world? Intelligent performers, smart kids that can be better leaders. I'd like to replace almost every Western leader in the world right now with someone that actually has good character and good values and cares about humanity and other people. And I'm not trying to sound super liberal. I mean, seriously. I mean, couldn't we find some sanity in that? And as international educators, we've got a great chance to influence that next generation. I truly, with hand on heart, I believe it. I believe we can.
Fantastic.
Single guy, Shabby Greg. You got some final thoughts?
I just want to say, Greg, you're such an educator at heart because you came onto our show and there wasn't a message more than let's get some great schools, right? And you're opening schools. I'm glad you shared this with us because we don't always meet the people that are, founding these schools and behind it to make sure that they're quality. I invite all of our listeners to go on and let your fingers go and look for Google the Reinventing Education from Greg Perry. That's when you talked in 2024, I believe, in January on a TEDx, right? Yeah. You might have some more. I'm sure they could find you. I invite anybody to watch. I watched it earlier before this. And don't forget to go to their website, learn more about them. And that is a link we'll put in the bottom for you. It's GS in Education, I believe. Am I right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And one last comment. I want to get your wife on here, too, and we'll get her to talk about the monkey.
She's amazing. I'm very biased, but she's the most incredible woman in the world. She's amazing.
Greg, remind our listeners where they can find you on LinkedIn and maybe you're on X or where can we find out more about you, buddy?
I think LinkedIn's the best place. Greg, Greg, Parry, Parry. That's where I'm most vocal. More recently, I've actually been putting some short video snippets on there as well. But LinkedIn's probably the place that I'm very, very active. That's where I share my messages and stories, and happy for people to reach out to me in any shape or form.
I am Kat the Cat Guy, and I would like to say thank you to my co-host, JP Mint. You can find her at jpmintconsulting.com. Thank you, JP.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank my other co-host, the Shabby Greg, the single guy. You can find his book, International Teaching, The Best Kept Secrets in Education, at www.amazon.com.
He actually got that right the first time, Greg.
Wherever you find your finer books. I would like to thank our very special guest today, Greg Parry. Greg, thank you so much for coming on. You can find him at LinkedIn. He's got a website. And if you've got $50 million, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take $5 million and send that to ITP. And tell Greg that you got $45 million to open up a school. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today.
And Kent will be in room 303.
And I'm 303, as always. Thank you so much. We'll see you